If I swallow this, my life will have no way back. The night sea at Noma Bay surged like the beat of a drum. I knelt by the water's edge in the Lumira temple, gazing at the golden-scaled mermaid, her breaths labored, her eyes vast as if they held the entire night sky. I did not ask for her forgiveness. I only drew the shark-bone dagger, a family heirloom, and dipped it into the cold water. One cut. The golden scales flashed brilliantly, and a strip of radiant flesh lay in my hand. She groaned, a sound like coral reefs shattering. I swallowed it. The salty, burning taste spread through my body. I knew I had just broken the 1,000-year covenant between the sea and the land. But in my mind, there was only one question. Is this the night I plant the seed for a son? The sea at Ngoma Bay that night roared like a dirge of the heavens. Waves crashed against the reddish-brown cliffs, spraying white foam like mourning scarves torn from the hands of those bidding farewell. High above, the torches of the palace flickered, their golden light casting shadows on the ebony wood corridors, curved by time, where every whisper knew how to find the ears of those meant to hear it. Queen Kaja walked through that space as if carrying the weight of an entire drought season on her shoulders. Her eyes, once as bright as morning water, now bore the shadow of clouds from 3 failed childbirths, failures as defined by the court. 3 times, she had cradled princesses as radiant as dawn, but not once did she hear the cheers of the courtiers for a prince. During banquets, King Obadele's gaze no longer lingered on her for more than a breath. The smile that once softened his heart was now rarer than rain in the dry season. That silence was sometimes heavier than any reproach, but not everyone was silent. In the long corridors, in the breezy hanging gardens, and even amidst the wine-filled feasts, whispers buzzed like distant drums calling, "The queen only drinks moonlight, unable to hold thunder." They spoke of her womb as a barren field. They spoke of the royal honor as a river running dry. Then one day, that pain was etched with a deeper wound. The king took a new concubine. The young woman, with lips red as kola nut shells, walked with the confidence of one who knew she was chosen. Each time she passed, she offered Kaja a slight nod, half respectful, half pitying. And it was that pity that became the final dagger, making Kaja feel she was no longer seen as a queen, but merely a cumbersome shadow beside the throne. That night, when the night birds had ceased their calls and the sea sank into its salty breath, Kaja sat alone in her chamber, listening to the wind whistle through the door's cracks. The old nursemaid, who had raised her from infancy, quietly entered, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered, as if afraid the walls themselves had ears. "If you want a son, go to the Lumira temple." Kaja looked up, her eyes wavering between hope and fear. But the old nursemaid gazed far off, toward the black cliffs where the waves never stopped crashing. "There lies the golden mermaid, once cursed. They say a part of her holds the power to change the bloodline in a mother's womb, but to obtain it, there is a price." She did not continue. She didn't need to. Kaja had heard of the Lumira temple since she was a child, a place no one entered and returned whole. A place where the sea kept its promises as it kept its secrets forever. She knew well that if she went, she would wager not only her honor but her very soul. But that night, as the distant drums echoed from the city at the foot of the mountain, Kaja understood she had been driven to a path with only one way out. And that way out, ironically, led to the depths of the sea. Perhaps, deep down, what Kaja sought was not just a son. It was a chance to reclaim the gaze that once belonged to her, the gaze of the king, of the court, and perhaps of herself. Outside, the waves of Ngoma Bay continued to crash, each one like a countdown. On the horizon, clouds hung thick like mourning veils, ready to shroud everything in darkness. When pushed to the very edge, what price would one be willing to pay for a miracle? If you find this story intriguing and want to hear more, please comment the number 1, subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're watching from. Before dawn could touch the shores of Ngoma Bay, Kaja draped herself in a red earth cloak, hood pulled tight, and left the palace. The path to the southern cliffs was filled only with the sound of waves and the scent of salt. Beneath her feet, the wet stones, polished by centuries of wind and water, gleamed slickly. She did not look back. In her heart, each heartbeat was a reminder that hesitation would make everything dissolve like morning mist. The Lumira temple appeared as the sky turned gray. It was unlike any structure humans had ever built. Black basalt cliffs rose steeply, battered relentlessly by silver waves, carved with patterns resembling ancient script that only the sea could read. At the center of the cliffs stood a massive gate, its edges cracked, like the lips of an unhealed wound. The people of Noma Bay believed this place was the heartbeat of the sea. Each wave that surged into the temple's entrance and receded was a pulse of that heart. No one dared to enter, for they believed those who crossed the threshold would hear the whispers of the drowned and never return. But Kaja stepped forward. Inside, the space opened like the heart of a vast well. Light from above pierced through the water, shattering into swaying fragments of green and gold on the stone walls. At the center of the temple, a deep pool shimmered like oil at sunset. The air carried the scent of salt, mixed with dried seaweed and something older than time itself. And there, the mermaid Lumira. Her scales gleamed golden, each one like a fragment of the sun sunk into the sea's depths. Her hair flowed long, drifting around her body like a river of light. But that light was fading. Her breaths were thin as thread, and each time her eyelids parted, they revealed boundless eyes, eyes that knew more than all human memories combined. They did not look at Kaja, nor at anything, but seemed to peer through time into the realm of sacred oaths. Kaja knelt. No pleas, no tears, only a resolve as cold as the dagger hidden in her sleeve. The dagger was carved from the bone of a great white shark, its handle wrapped in sea nettle cords dyed red. It was the last heirloom of her ancestors, those who once spoke with the sea. When the blade touched the water, a sound like a sigh rippled across the pool's surface. She pressed the dagger to Lumira's side. One swift, precise cut. The golden skin parted, and from within, a strip of radiant flesh, glowing like fire beneath water, emerged. Lumira did not scream, but her groan echoed through the temple like coral cracking under deep-sea pressure, a sound not meant for human ears. Kaja did not hesitate. She lifted the flesh to her lips. Water dripped, salty and cold, but when it touched her tongue, it turned searing hot, like lightning melting into her blood. She swallowed it whole. At that moment, the sea roared. The sound from outside tore through the temple's silence. Waves crashed against the cliffs with such force that the stone floor beneath Kaja trembled. The pool's water swirled, rising as if to swallow everything. The light in the temple shifted, brilliant gold turned to deep green, then black as ink. Kaja stood, gripping the dagger's hilt, feeling a strange fire surge through her veins. Fragmented images flashed in her mind, sunken cities, towers of coral, colossal creatures drifting through darkness. And at the end of those visions, a sensation like a cold hand pressing its mark into her womb. She knew from that moment her body no longer belonged to her alone. Outside, the waves still roared. Below, in the darkest depths of the sea, something had heard her act. Perhaps it had begun to remember her name. After the night at the Lumira temple, the sea of Noma Bay fell strangely silent. The waves still lapped at the shore, but they lacked their familiar cadence. It was as if the ocean was holding its breath, waiting for something. Kaja returned to the palace without a word, her cloak crusted with dried salt. Just a few days later, the servants noticed a change in her gait. Her belly swelled, not with the slow rhythm typical of pregnant women, but as if driven by an urgent force. Each morning, she awoke with peculiar cravings: coarse sea salt, shrimp charred black, and squid dark with ink. When the palace maids placed these before her, their eyes flickered with unease, as if they were serving an ancient ritual older than the throne itself. Kaja sought no diagnosis or explanation. She knew the cause, but no one was permitted to know. In the long nights, as moonlight swept across the bedroom floor, she felt powerful movements in her womb, not gentle kicks, but surges and swirls like rising tides. Each time, she closed her eyes, telling herself it was the sign of a healthy child. But deep in her mind, a part of her understood this child did not entirely belong to the land. 9 lunar cycles passed. That morning, the sky above Noma Bay transformed in a way never seen before. The sun and moon appeared together, both blazing red, hanging high like twin fires gazing down on the earth. The people called it a double eclipse, a phenomenon the master astronomers said occurred only when the sea and land opened their gates to one another. In the grandest chamber of the palace, Kaja writhed in a marble basin filled with salt water. The royal midwives gathered around, silent, neither urging nor soothing, as if they were mere witnesses to a ritual they dared not interrupt. The air was thick with the scent of salt and incense from bronze bowls placed at the room's 4 corners. A fierce contraction sent water spilling over the basin's edge, flooding the tiled floor. And then, amidst the distant echo of waves, the child was born, not in blood, but in a warm, salty current. The boy's body was small but extraordinary. His hair was white as sun-bleached sand, his eyes a deep blue, so profound that staring too long felt like being pulled into their depths. His skin shimmered under the eclipse's light, like a wet stone plucked from the ocean floor. He did not cry immediately. Instead, his tiny lips parted, uttering a phrase no one in the room could understand. The language was like wind whistling through underwater cliffs, like a song echoing from the darkened depths. The midwives exchanged glances but dared not repeat the words. Only one among them committed them to memory. Then he cried a sound unlike any other, like the distant wail of a sea flute, both clear and laden with melancholy. When news spread through the palace that a prince had been born, cheers echoed through the corridors. Bronze bells rang incessantly, heralding the momentous event the court had long awaited. King Obadele entered, his eyes alight for the first time in years, lingering long on the child wrapped in sea-soaked cloth. His name was chosen that day, Tala, meaning son of the waves. But beneath the court's jubilation, those present at the birth could not forget the first words the boy had spoken, in that strange tongue before his cry. Words that sounded like a prophecy, evoking images of death and the silence of fire. Where the drowned walk, fire will fall silent. That day, the sea grew unnaturally still again, as if it, too, was listening. Tala grew up within the ebony walls of the Ngoma Bay Palace, where the scent of the sea seeped into every corner. From the moment he could walk, he carried a different rhythm, as if his heart beat to the cadence of waves, not the drums of the land. He was healthy and quick-witted, but his words were scarce. When he spoke, they were not simple answers or greetings, but cryptic riddles flowing out like fragments of an ancient tale. At first, the court dismissed them as childish games, but then, one by one, his words began to come true. Once, at only 4 years old, Tala sat under the shade of an ancient baobab tree in the courtyard, his eyes gazing far off, and said, "Tomorrow, the sky will weep in gold." The next morning, rain fell under a blazing sun, each drop glinting like a necklace falling from the heavens. Every year on Tala's birthday, Noma Bay seemed touched by magic. Trees bore heavy fruit, corn ripened all at once, and rain came just enough to wash the dust from the roads without flooding the fields. The sea teemed with fish, the fishermen's nets so heavy that 3 or 4 men were needed to haul them in. The people rejoiced, calling it the blessing of the prince, the son of the waves. But alongside each blessing, there was always a death. In the first year, a young girl was found in the palace fountain, her hair covered with sea flowers. In the second year, a seasoned fisherman washed ashore, still clutching a giant oyster unlike any seen in those waters. In the third year, 2 palace guards were discovered floating in the garden pond, eyes wide open, with no sign of struggle. There were no wounds, no cries for help were heard, only their eyes wide, unblinking as if they had witnessed something beyond human imagination. At first, the court tried to conceal these events, calling them accidents or coincidences. But in the fish markets and harbor taverns, people began to whisper a single phrase: "The sea has taken its share." The rumors spread as swiftly as the scent of salt on the wind. Some claimed that the night before each death, the sea receded unnaturally, exposing rocks never seen before, and a faint song echoed from afar. Others said they saw a shimmering creature under the moonlight, slithering through the city's canals. Kaja heard all these whispers. She told herself they were merely the harsh coincidences of nature. But each time she looked into her son's eyes, she saw something unnameable, a chilling depth, as if somewhere in the abyss, he was listening to another voice. During Tala's birthday ceremonies, as others danced and sang, Kaja felt a thin but unbreakable distance between herself and her son. It was like a sea mist, transparent yet separating 2 shores. Tala, though young, seemed to sense this divide. He often slipped away from the feasts, sitting alone by the shore, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The waves lapped at the coast as if speaking to him, and the wind curled around him as if greeting an old friend returned. When he came back, he brought new, stranger sayings. When the moon touches the waves, the gate will open. Or, those who do not belong to the sea will forget themselves beneath the water. Each phrase was like a piece of a map leading somewhere, but to where no one knew. King Obadele took pride in his son's uniqueness, seeing it as a sign of divine destiny. But the elders in the fishing villages thought differently. They watched Tala from a distance, no longer bowing as they once did, but muttering prayers as if shielding themselves from something inevitable. And then, on Tala's 7th birthday, the sea did not only bring fish, it brought a ferocious storm, unlike any seen in that month. Amid the howling winds, the old rumors resurfaced, stronger than ever. If the sea has given, the sea will also take back. The question hung heavy in everyone's minds, and perhaps in Kaja's own. What would the sea take back, and when? The storm on Tala's 7th birthday left a long scar in the memory of Ngoma Bay's people. The water receded, leaving pools of white salt like ashes and fragments of strange shells never seen before. No one forgot that night, when the boy, the son of the waves, stood silently by his room's window for hours, his eyes fixed on the roaring ocean. After that event, Kaja kept her son closer, but she also knew the prince needed guidance. The riddles Tala spoke grew increasingly enigmatic, filled with images that even the oldest scholars of the court could not decipher. The old tutors gradually gave up, saying they could not keep up with a mind that was both on land and adrift at sea. And then Amina appeared. She arrived on a quiet morning when mist still clung to the tiled roofs, and the scent of the sea was as light as incense smoke. Her skin was dark, smooth as freshly polished ebony, her long hair woven into braids that cascaded down her back, interspersed with tiny gold beads that glimmered in the light. Her eyes held an indefinable depth, not entirely the gaze of someone who lived on shore. Kaja observed the woman from a high balcony, noting how she walked through the palace gates as if she knew every cobblestone by heart, neither subservient nor arrogant, simply silent. Tala met Amina in the tranquil eastern garden. The boy was drawing swirls in the sand with a bamboo stick, murmuring sounds like the tide. Amina stood there for a long time, not interrupting. When he looked up, their eyes met, and he said only one thing: "Your hair smells like home." Amina smiled, a fleeting smile like the shadow of a seabird. Without another word, she sat down, her fingers lightly touching the sand swirls, then drawing a new symbol, a half-open shell with a drop of water at its center. Tala looked at it, his eyes as if recognizing something long dormant in his memory. In the days that followed, Amina became a gentle shadow beside him. She did not impose lessons or correct mistakes. Instead, she told stories of distant shores, of sunken cities and ancient whales carrying centuries of memories. She knew when to stay silent to hear the boy hum a melody unknown to those on land. And she knew when to pause, letting Tala find answers within the riddles he himself created. Kaja watched from afar, feeling both reassured and uneasy. There was something about Amina that made her unable to fully trust a stillness too perfect, like the sea hiding a storm beneath its surface. The truth, unknown to those on land, Amina was not merely a tutor. She was a warrior of the undersea kingdom, one who had swum through abysses so dark that light could not reach them. And above all, she was Lumira's sister, the golden-scaled mermaid whose flesh had been taken by Kaja. Amina's heart beat with two rhythms, one of the living, one of the grieving. Lumira's soul had never fully vanished. It resided in Tala's heart, like a pearl hidden within a cracked shell. Amina's mission was to return that soul to the sea, restoring the balance broken the night Kaja entered the temple. But as Amina observed Tala, watching him tilt his head to listen to the cries of gulls, seeing his hands draw swirls that only the sea could understand, she realized something that complicated her mission. The boy was not just a vessel. He was part of both worlds, a bridge that even those born of the tides could not easily cross. The closer she grew to him, the more Amina saw the danger. That bridge could break, and if it did, it would not just be a single soul lost. Both sea and land would bear the consequences. On the cobblestone paths of Numa Bay, the people began to notice the new woman in the palace. They did not know who she was, but they felt they had seen her form somewhere, perhaps in a salt-tinged dream, or in a story their grandmothers told by the fire. Kaja kept her distance, but her eyes followed whenever Amina and Tala walked through the courtyard, and it seemed that each time her gaze met Amina's deep eyes, a cold wave ran down her spine. For sometimes those who come to teach are also those who bring judgment. And the question, though Kaja dared not voice it, hung heavy in the air. Had Amina come to save her son, or to take him away forever? Dear audience, stay tuned for the next part that will leave you in awe. Please take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see people joining us from all over the world. From the day Amina entered the palace, Tala's steps seemed to find a new rhythm. He followed her everywhere, not with the impulsive enthusiasm of a child, but with a deep, quiet attachment, like the tide always finding its way back to shore. They spent hours together under the shade of the ancient baobab tree, or walking along the ebony corridors where the sound of waves echoed from afar. Amina did not teach him lessons written on paper, but opened a different world where the script of water was read like a living book. She let him touch the sea's surface and watch the ripples form invisible words. She showed him how to speak with dolphins, not in human tongue, but with clicking sounds like bubbles bursting under sunlight. The boy listened, nodded, and responded in that same language, causing the dolphins to tilt their heads, gazing at him as if recognizing one of their own. The more time they spent together, the more Amina realized a truth that shook her heart. Tala was not merely a vessel for Lumira's soul. He was a rare bridge between land and sea, a form of existence that even the legends of the deep spoke of as mere fairy tales. In him, two heartbeats of human and of sea blended into one, not clashing but complementing, creating an unpredictable form of power. This made her original mission far more perilous. If she severed this bond to return her sister's soul, it would not just harm one life, but both worlds would lose the only bridge that had ever existed. But as their bond grew stronger, another suspicion began to take root elsewhere in Kaja's heart. At first, it was only fragments. She caught the way Tala looked at Amina with a devotion that even a son's love for his mother could not match. She saw how he listened intently to her, even when her words were as vague as water flowing over rocks. And then, one night, as the palace lay steeped in darkness, Kaja woke with a start. In a half-finished dream, she heard a strange sound. Not drums, not wind, but the sea whispering right in her ear. So clear she felt the salty breath on her cheek. "I will take back what is mine." She sat up, her heart pounding. Outside the window, the night sea stretched wide, moonlight glinting on the water like countless eyes staring back. In the distance, she glimpsed a figure on the shore, tall, with long hair, moving as if leaving no footprints. Kaja wasn't sure if it was real or a lingering dream, but the image clung to her eyes, inescapable. From that day, suspicion crept into every glance. Kaja began to watch Amina more closely, listening to every word she spoke, every lesson she gave her son. But Amina was as smooth as the sea on a windless day, not a single ripple for Kaja to grasp. One thing Kaja knew for certain: whenever Amina and Tala were together, the air seemed to shift, growing thicker, and the sound of waves from afar sounded nearer, clearer. In Kaja's heart, maternal love and fear waged a fierce battle. She knew she owed the sea and bore a debt no one could repay in her stead. But now, that debt was no longer hers alone. It clung to her son, pulling him toward a world she could not enter. Amina, meanwhile, knew time was running out. Each day with Tala, she saw Lumira's soul weaving deeper into the boy. The thread tying their two heartbeats, his and her sister's, was becoming harder to unravel. If she waited too long, returning Lumira would mean destroying the bridge itself. And if that bridge collapsed, the sea might rage in a way that Ngoma Bay would never forget. The sea continued to whisper on moonlit nights. The same phrase repeated, woven into the waves, like a reminder or a warning. "I will take back what is mine." That night, the sea wind blew long and cold, carrying a saltier scent than usual, as if the entire ocean was pressing against the cliffs of Ngoma Bay. In a room lit by the dim flicker of oil lamps, Tala sat across from Kaja, his deep blue eyes seeming to pull her toward an abyss. Gone was the child's smile, the curious gaze, replaced by a single question, sharp as a blade. "Mother, whose flesh did you eat?" Kaja froze, her breath caught, her hands instinctively clutching the hem of her robe. In that moment, every denial, every prepared excuse vanished. Only the truth remained, raw and heavy, like a stone sunk at the bottom of her heart for years. Her voice came out hoarse, trembling. She had done it to give birth to him, to have a prince, to stand firm against the court and its scornful gazes. It was a bargain she believed she could bear alone. But she hadn't foreseen that it would become a burden he carried from the day he was born. Tala listened, not interrupting once. When Kaja lowered her head, avoiding her son's gaze, he only said softly, "I don't blame you, Mother, but I don't want to stay." The words were not an accusation, but a gentle, resolute judgment. Amina stepped out from the shadows, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. In her hands was a large seashell, filled with shimmering seawater that gleamed under the lamplight. Without a word, she began to hum a low, deep melody, the song of the tides, the sound the sea sings to souls trapped between two worlds. Each note was like a small wave colliding and spreading, touching every corner of the room. Tala closed his eyes, his chest trembling slightly as if responding to a different rhythm. And then, amidst Amina's song, a radiant golden light pierced through his clothing, emanating from his chest. The light grew stronger, brighter, until the faint form of Lumira appeared, her hair like a river of sunlight, her golden scales sparkling. Her eyes were closed in peace. She lifted her head one last time to look at Amina, a gaze that was both a greeting and a thank you, before dissolving into scattered flecks of light, drifting out the window and melting into the night sea. The silence that followed was heavy. Only Kaja's breathing remained, ragged and weary. She felt as if she had lost a part of her son, yet at the same time something felt lighter, as if a long tangled knot had finally been undone. But the sea did not grow calm. Far offshore, the water began to churn violently. The moon was partially obscured, and from the deepest darkness, a massive black shape rose, shaking the very air. It was not a mountain, not a storm, but M'Baku, the ancient whale god, older than any kingdom, stronger than any storm that had ever struck Noma Bay. On M'Baku's back were scars like mountain gorges, and each breath he took sent plumes of mist rising like silver columns. His eyes were deep and dark as the abyss, holding centuries of suppressed rage. It was said that M'Baku only appeared when the ocean was deeply offended, when a blood debt remained unpaid. The whisper, "I will take back what is mine," now became the sea's roar, crashing against the rocky shore. Kaja gripped her son's hand tightly, but Tala stood, his eyes unafraid. Amina gazed at M'Baku from afar, her shoulders tensed, as if preparing for a final battle. She knew that freeing Lumira was only half the story. The other half, the sea's debt, stood here, colossal and unavoidable. Waves crashed into Ngoma Bay like colossal walls rising vertically, towering higher than the watchtowers and swallowing the screams and cries of the people. The seawater was dark and heavy like stone, slamming straight into the shore, toppling the ebony wood houses and sweeping away everything in its path. In the sky, clouds swirled into ferocious circles, lightning flashed, revealing M'Baku's massive form in the heart of the sea, his shadow blanketing the entire horizon. Amid the wind and waves, Kaja knelt on the cold, wet stone floor, her cloak clinging to her body like a layer of seaweed. She wept, her tears mingling with rain and salt, her trembling hands reaching toward the sea. She no longer held the regal poise of a queen, only the desperation of a mother. Her pleas were devoured by the waves, but their meaning was clear. She begged to take her son's place, to let him live, to have the sea forgive with her blood instead of his. But Tala had heard enough. He stepped out from the eaves where Amina stood, his steps steady despite the water rising to his waist. His white hair clung wetly, his deep blue eyes reflecting the lightning and M'Baku's shadow. Standing in the flooded square, he raised his head toward the ancient god and spoke, his voice carrying farther than the wind. "Let me be the tide. No more blood, no more theft." In that moment, the wind shifted direction. Every sound seemed to slow, making way for the sea's heartbeat to merge with the boy's. Tala spread his arms, and his body began to dissolve, not in the way of flesh being torn apart, but like foam returning to the waves. From where his heart had been, a warm light poured out, not light stolen from any life, but the primal light of his own blood, pure, willing, untainted by sin. The light spread wide, dyeing the entire storm a gentle gold. The waves slowed, curled back, then lowered as if bowing. M'Baku, colossal and unyielding, halted. The god of the sea's profound eyes looked down at the boy dissolving into the tide, and in that instant the ancient rage softened like a flame meeting rain. The sea retreated, not with brutal, wrenching force, but with the quiet of acceptance. The water flowed back to the open ocean, returning the sands, the leaning houses, the breath to the people of Noma Bay. But it did not return Tala. From that day on, no one saw the boy again. People said that Tala had become the wave keeper, a spirit living amid the tides, guarding the new covenant between sea and land, a promise without blood, without theft, only fair exchange and respect. When fishermen cast their nets, they performed rituals on the shore, calling Tala's name for permission, and when their holds were full of fish, they returned a portion to the sea as a pledge to maintain balance. Kaja lived on, but never returned to her former self. The crown remained on her head, but her eyes always turned to the sea, as if searching for her son's silhouette on every wave. She did not claim to be a good person, only wiser after the price she paid. Each year, on the full moon closest to storm season, she placed a white seashell at the foot of the watchtower to remind herself of the debt and the boy who chose to repay it in a way no one expected. And on nights when the tide rose high, when the sea wind whipped against the cliffs and waves crashed like distant drums, some swore they heard a clear, youthful laugh echoing through the salty breeze, the laugh of Tala, the wave keeper, the son of both land and ocean. The question lingering in the hearts of every person in Ngoma Bay through generations remains. If one day the sea rages again, will the wave keeper return? Or will he leave us to face the consequences? The sea wind still blows, but since the day Tala transformed into the wave keeper, it carries a different scent, gentler, warmer, like an embrace from a son who has gone far away. Noma Bay revived, the fishing seasons became abundant again, and rain came just when the land was dry. The people believe that all these good fortunes are the gifts Tala left behind, exchanged for his own blood. Kaja still places a seashell at the foot of the tower each year, but in her eyes, it is no longer a haunting reminder, but one of gratitude and serenity. She understands that power and love cannot be measured by the number of people kneeling, but by what one dares to release to save something greater than oneself. Occasionally, on nights when the sea is calm, Amina still walks along the sandy shore, her eyes gazing far out. Some say she is guarding the covenant. Others believe she is waiting for a special tide the day Tala might step ashore once more. And on the horizon, where waves and sky meet, sometimes a faint golden light flickers, like a promise that has never been lost. The story ends here, but will the sea keep the covenant forever? Or will a new storm force the wavekeeper to return? If you feel the power of love, sacrifice, and the shadows of past debts, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me, what do you think about Tala's decision, and do you believe that Noma Bay is truly safe? Don't forget to hit follow so that if part 2 of the story rises from the waves, you'll be the first to hear the call from the ocean. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see people joining us from all over the world. Comment the number 1 if you think the story is good, so we can continue serving you more great stories.